My neighbor said, "Your son came in today with his wife and tried to withdraw all the money from your bank account." What I learned next made me change my will. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. For 67 years, I had lived my life according to simple principles. Work hard, save money, trust your family, and always keep your word. My husband Robert and I had built everything from nothing. A modest house in a quiet Ohio neighborhood, a small savings account that grew year by year, and most importantly, a son we raised with love and care. When Robert passed 3 years ago, I thought I knew what loneliness meant, but I still had David, our only child, and his wife Jennifer. They visited every Sunday, brought groceries, helped with yard work. I was grateful. I was blessed, or so I believed. It was a Tuesday morning in late October when everything changed. The maple trees lining Elm Street had turned brilliant shades of orange and red, and I had gone to First National Bank to deposit a check from the sale of some old jewelry. The bank was nearly empty. Just me, 2 tellers, and Margaret Chen, my neighbor from 3 houses down. Margaret and I had known each other for 15 years. We'd shared countless cups of coffee, traded recipes, watched each other's homes during vacations. I was standing at the counter, finishing my transaction, when Margaret approached me. Her face was pale, her eyes darting nervously toward the bank manager's office. "Ruth," she whispered, touching my elbow, "I need to tell you something. Please don't be alarmed, but today your son came here with his wife. They tried to withdraw all the money from your account." The world seemed to tilt. My hand gripped the counter edge. "What?" My voice came out hoarse, barely audible. Margaret glanced around, then leaned closer. "I was here this morning, waiting to see Mr. Peterson about my mortgage. I saw David and Jennifer at the desk with Sarah, the head teller. They had papers, Ruth. They were arguing about authorization. I heard David say he had your power of attorney." My heart hammered against my ribs. "But I never gave him power of attorney. I never signed anything like that." "I know," Margaret said quietly. "Sarah told them she needed to verify the documents. They got angry." Jennifer's voice got really loud. "She said something about you being too old to manage your own finances and that they were protecting your interests. Then Mr. Peterson came out and they left quickly. Ruth, I thought you should know." I stood there, frozen, as Margaret squeezed my hand and walked away. The teller handed me my receipt, but I barely saw it. My fingers trembled as I folded the paper and put it in my purse. David and Jennifer, my son and daughter-in-law, trying to take my money. How was this possible? Why would they do this? I drove home in a daze, barely registering the familiar streets. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat in the car for 10 minutes, staring at nothing. My mind raced through recent months, searching for clues I had missed. There had been odd moments, hadn't there? Small things I had dismissed. 3 weeks ago, Jennifer had asked me detailed questions about my bank accounts. Which bank I used, whether I had savings bonds, what my monthly income was. She'd framed it as helping me organize my finances for tax purposes. I'd thought she was being thoughtful. Last month, David had brought over papers for me to sign, something about updating my medical directives, he'd said. I'd been tired that evening, recovering from a cold. Had I read everything carefully? Had I actually signed something I shouldn't have? 2 months ago, they'd started talking about assisted living facilities. "Just for the future, Mom," David had said. "You're healthy now, but we want to be prepared." At the time, it had seemed like reasonable planning. Now, each memory took on a sinister cast. I walked into my house, the house Robert and I had bought in 1982, the house where we'd raised David, the house filled with 40 years of memories. And suddenly, it felt different, vulnerable, as if invisible hands were already reaching through the walls, trying to take it from me. I made tea with shaking hands, set the cup on the kitchen table, stared at it. The question burned in my mind. What else had they done? What other lies had I believed? And the darker question, the one that made my stomach clench with fear. What were they planning to do next? I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, watching shadows shift across the plaster as car headlights swept past outside. Every sound made me jump, the house settling, the furnace clicking on, branches scraping against the window. For the first time in years, I felt afraid in my own home. At 5 a.m, I gave up trying to rest. I went downstairs, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad Robert had left in his desk drawer. I needed to understand what I was dealing with. I needed to see the full picture. I started writing. Everything I could remember. My savings account at First National Bank, approximately $78,000. Money from Robert's life insurance, my own retirement savings, and the proceeds from selling his truck and tools after he died. My checking account, usually around $4,000 for monthly expenses. A certificate of deposit, maturing in 6 months. $15,000. My house, paid off. Estimated value around $240,000, according to the property tax assessment. Robert's old investment account, which I'd largely forgotten about. Maybe $12,000 in various stocks. Total assets, roughly $350,000. Not a fortune. Not enough to retire in luxury, but enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life, to handle medical emergencies, to maintain my independence. It was everything Robert and I had worked for. And my son wanted to take it. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't David trying to help me and going about it clumsily. This was calculated. This was theft. But why? David had a good job as a regional sales manager. Jennifer worked as a dental hygienist. They owned their home, drove decent cars. What did they need my money for? I picked up my phone and opened Facebook, something I rarely did, preferring real conversations to digital ones. I found Jennifer's profile. Her posts were public. I scrolled through them. Photos from a vacation to Turks and Caicos 3 months ago. A new BMW in the driveway last month. Pictures of an expensive-looking watch David was wearing. A post about finally getting into the country club they'd wanted to join. These weren't the purchases of people living within their means. I set the phone down, feeling sick. They were living beyond their income. And they saw me, elderly, alone, trusting, as a solution to their financial problems. Had they already taken money? I grabbed my purse and found my bank statements from the past 6 months. I'd glanced at them when they arrived, but never scrutinized them carefully. Now I looked at every line. There, 3 months ago, a withdrawal of $5,000. I didn't remember making it. 2 months ago, another withdrawal, $3,500. I had no record of that in my checkbook. My hands shook as I counted. $8,500 gone. Money I hadn't spent, withdrawals I hadn't made. The theft had already started. I stood up, paced the kitchen. Fear coursed through me. Not just fear of losing money, but deeper fears. Fear of being helpless. Fear of being a victim. Fear that the son I'd raised and loved could do this to me. But beneath the fear, something else was growing. Something harder and colder, anger. Robert had worked 12-hour days for 30 years as a machinist. He'd come home exhausted, his hands rough and calloused. But he'd smiled at me, and we'd saved every penny we could. I had worked too, as a receptionist, as a bookkeeper, whatever I could find. And we'd built this life together, dollar by dollar. No one had the right to steal that from me, not even my own son. I sat back down at the table, picked up my pen. I needed a plan, not a rash, emotional reaction, a careful, methodical plan. First, secure my accounts. I would go to the bank as soon as it opened and make sure no one else could access my money. Second, find out exactly what documents David and Jennifer had. Had I actually signed something? Had they forged my signature? Third, protect my house. I needed to check the property records, make sure they hadn't somehow gotten their names added to the deed. Fourth, change my will. Whatever it said now, I needed to change it immediately. I would need help. Professional help. A lawyer. Someone who understood financial elder abuse. Because that's what this was, wasn't it? Abuse. The word made me flinch, but I didn't look away from it. I had 8 hours until the bank opened. I spent them organizing every financial document I owned, making copies, creating a timeline of every suspicious conversation and event I could remember. By the time the sun rose, I was ready. They had started this fight, but I was going to finish it. At 9 o'clock sharp, I walked through the doors of First National Bank. I'd dressed carefully that morning. A navy blue suit I'd worn to Robert's funeral, pearl earrings, my hair neatly styled. I wanted to look competent, alert, not like some confused old woman who couldn't manage her affairs. I asked to speak with Mr. Peterson, the bank manager. His secretary made me wait 15 minutes, but I sat patiently, my purse in my lap, my hands folded. When he finally called me in, I got straight to the point. I understand my son tried to withdraw money from my account yesterday, I said. I need to know exactly what happened. Mr. Peterson, a balding man in his 50s, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Mrs. Whitmore, I'm not at liberty to discuss other customers' activities. He's not a customer, it's my account, my money, and I have the right to know if someone attempted to access it without my authorization. Something in my tone must have convinced him. He pulled up information on his computer screen. Your son and his wife came in yesterday morning with documents claiming they had financial power of attorney over your affairs. They wanted to make a large withdrawal. Our head teller, Sarah, asked to verify the documents because we had no such authorization on file. When she explained she needed time to confirm everything, they became agitated. What documents did they have? A notarized power of attorney form dated 6 weeks ago with what appeared to be your signature. My stomach dropped. May I see it? I'm sorry, but they took the documents with them when they left. Mr. Peterson, I never signed a power of attorney. That's either a forgery or I was deceived about what I was signing. His expression grew serious. Are you certain? Absolutely certain. I want my accounts locked down immediately. No one but me should be able to access them. Not my son, not anyone. And I want a new account number, if necessary. We can certainly implement additional security measures. He began typing. I'll flag your account for in-person verification only. Any transactions will require you to appear in person with 2 forms of identification. I'll also add a password that only you know. Thank you. I paused. And I need copies of my statements for the past year. All transactions. I believe there have been unauthorized withdrawals. He looked at me with something like sympathy. I'll print those for you right away. While I waited, I called a law firm I'd found online that morning, Thompson & Associates, specialists in elder law. I explained my situation to the receptionist and made an appointment for that afternoon. When I left the bank 30 minutes later, I had a folder full of statements, a secured account, and a cold certainty settling into my bones. This was real. This was happening. And I was not going to be a victim. The law office was in a professional building downtown. Catherine Thompson turned out to be a woman in her early 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She listened to my story without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. "You did the right thing securing your accounts immediately," she said when I finished. "Now, let me ask you some difficult questions. Did you ever sign any documents your son brought you? Papers he said were for medical directives or other estate planning?" I thought back to that evening last month. He brought papers. I was tired, recovering from a cold. He said they were medical directive updates. I signed them. But I didn't read them carefully. Catherine nodded. "That's likely how they got a signature. They may have slipped the power of attorney form in with legitimate documents, or they may have traced your signature onto a new document. Both are common tactics in financial exploitation cases." "Can we prove it?" "We can try. I'll need to file a formal complaint, request the documents from the bank, possibly hire a handwriting analyst. But Mrs. Whitmore, I have to warn you. This is going to get ugly. When you challenge this, when you start legal proceedings, your son and daughter-in-law will fight back. Family financial abuse cases are often the most bitter cases I handle." "I understand. Do you?" She looked at me directly. "This may mean the permanent end of your relationship with your son. He may say terrible things about you. He may try to claim you're senile, incompetent. He may turn other family members against you. Are you prepared for that?" I met her gaze. 3 days ago, I would have said no. But that was before I learned my son tried to steal my life savings. That was before I discovered he's already taken $8,000 without my knowledge. "Ms. Thompson, I'm 72 years old. I'm not senile. I'm not helpless. And I'm not going to let anyone, not even my own child, rob me of the life Robert and I built." She smiled faintly. "Then let's get to work." I left her office 2 hours later with a retainer agreement signed, a strategy in place, and my first real weapon: a formal request for the bank to produce all documents David and Jennifer had presented. Once we had those documents, we could prove forgery. That evening, my phone rang. David's name appeared on the screen. My hand hovered over the phone. Then I let it ring through to voicemail. When I listened to the message later, his voice sounded cheerful, casual. "Hey, Mom. Just checking in. Haven't heard from you in a few days. Give me a call when you get a chance. Love you." The normalcy of his tone chilled me more than anger would have. He didn't know yet that I knew. He was still playing the dutiful son. But that was about to change. Catherine moved quickly. Within 3 days, she'd filed formal requests with the bank and sent a cease and desist letter to David and Jennifer, informing them that any further attempts to access my accounts or assets would be considered criminal fraud. She'd also helped me file a complaint with Adult Protective Services and contacted the notary whose stamp had appeared on the supposed power of attorney document. I was in my kitchen, reviewing documents Catherine had sent me, when David's car pulled into my driveway. It was Thursday afternoon, not a Sunday. They never visited on Thursdays. I watched through the window as both David and Jennifer got out of the car. Their faces were hard, their movements sharp. Jennifer was carrying papers. They knew. I opened the door before they could knock. David. Jennifer. "What the hell is going on, Mom?" David pushed past me into the house. His face was flushed red. "We got a letter from a lawyer. You're accusing us of fraud? Of trying to steal from you?" "You did try to steal from me." I kept my voice steady. "You went to my bank and tried to withdraw my money using forged documents." "Forged?" Jennifer's voice was shrill. "You signed that power of attorney yourself, don't you remember? You were having trouble managing your bills, and we were trying to help you." "I was never having trouble managing my bills, and I never signed a power of attorney." David stepped closer to me. "Mom, please, be reasonable. You're getting older." things get confusing. We're just trying to protect you. By taking $8,000 from my account without telling me?" The room went silent. David's expression flickered. Surprise, then calculation. "I have no idea what you're talking about," he said. "Don't lie to me." Something broke inside me, and my voice rose. "I have the bank statements. I have proof of withdrawals I never made. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Did you think I was too stupid or too senile to check my own accounts?" Jennifer threw the papers she was carrying onto my kitchen table. "You're making a huge mistake, Ruth. A huge mistake. Do you know how much David has sacrificed for you? All the time we've spent taking care of you, running your errands, fixing things around this house? I never asked you to do any of that." "No, you just expected it." Jennifer's face was twisted with anger. "And this is how you repay us? By hiring a lawyer and treating us like criminals?" "You are criminals. You tried to steal from me." David's demeanor changed suddenly. The anger drained from his face, replaced by something colder. "Mom, listen carefully. You're not thinking clearly. Anyone can see that. If you continue with this insane accusation, we'll have no choice but to petition for conservatorship. We'll prove you're not mentally competent to handle your affairs." The threat hung in the air between us. "We'll tell the court about all the times you've been confused," Jennifer added. "How you forget things. How you left the stove on last year. How you can't even use your smartphone properly. We'll bring in doctors, get evaluations. And we'll win. Get out of my house." My voice shook, but not with fear anymore, with fury. "Both of you, get out right now." "Mom," I said, "get out." I moved to the phone on the wall. "Or I'm calling the police and telling them you're trespassing and threatening me." David stared at me for a long moment. I saw the calculation in his eyes, weighing his options. Then he grabbed Jennifer's arm. "Fine. But you're going to regret this. When you're sitting alone in some state-run nursing home because you can't take care of yourself and you've alienated the only family you have left, remember this moment. Remember that you chose this." They left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. I stood in my kitchen, trembling all over. The confrontation had lasted maybe 10 minutes, but I felt like I'd run a marathon. I sank into a chair, my heart pounding so hard I felt dizzy. They'd threatened me with conservatorship. They'd threatened to take away my independence, to declare me incompetent. And I knew they would try to make good on that threat. I called Catherine immediately and told her everything. "That's retaliation," she said grimly, "and it actually helps our case. Document everything they said. Write it down now while it's fresh. We're going to need it." Over the next few days, I barely left my house. I was exhausted, emotionally, physically. The confrontation had taken more out of me than I wanted to admit. I kept my doors locked, didn't answer the phone unless I recognized the number, and spent hours just sitting in Robert's old armchair, trying to process what my life had become. Margaret came by on Saturday with homemade soup. "I heard some yelling the other day," she said carefully. "Are you okay?" I told her everything. It felt like releasing a pressure valve. She listened, squeezed my hand, and said, "Ruth, you're doing the right thing. Don't let them bully you." For 3 days, I rested. I needed to gather my strength. Because I knew this wasn't over. David and Jennifer had retreated, but they were planning their next move, and I had to be ready. The email arrived on Tuesday morning. It was from Jennifer's account, the subject line reading, "Please read this, Mom." I stared at it for several minutes before opening it. "Dear Ruth, I've spent the past few days thinking about everything that's happened, and I feel terrible about how our last conversation ended. I spoke out of anger and hurt, and I said things I deeply regret. David and I never meant to upset you or make you feel threatened. We love you so much. I realize now that we went about things the wrong way. We should have talked to you more openly about our concerns for your well-being. We should have explained things better. The truth is, we've been worried about you since Robert passed. You've seemed lonely and sometimes confused, and we just wanted to make sure you were protected. The money we withdrew from your account, that was for the new water heater you needed last winter. Remember? Your old one broke, and you asked David to handle getting it replaced. We paid for it up front with our credit card, and David withdrew that money to reimburse us. We should have communicated better about it. Please, can we sit down and talk? Just the three of us? No lawyers, no accusations. Just family. We can clear up all these misunderstandings. We can show you all the receipts and documents. We can work this out. We're your family, Ruth. Your only family. Please don't throw that away over a simple miscommunication. Love, Jennifer. I read it twice. It was smooth, persuasive, hitting all the emotional notes, presenting them as concerned and misunderstood, painting me as confused and reactive, offering reconciliation while subtly reinforcing the narrative that I was the problem. 6 months ago, even 3 weeks ago, I might have believed it. I might have felt guilty, might have questioned my own judgment. Now, I recognized it for what it was: manipulation. I forwarded the email to Catherine without responding. Her reply came within an hour. Classic manipulation tactic. They're trying to get you to meet without legal representation so they can pressure you to drop everything. Do not respond. Do not meet with them alone. That afternoon, David called. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail, his voice soft and pleading. Mom, please, I miss you. Can't we just talk? I know you're angry, but I'm your son. Remember when I was 10 and I broke your favorite vase playing ball in the house? You forgave me then. You always forgave me. That's who you are. You're kind and loving and fair. Please give me a chance to explain everything. I love you, Mom. I love you so much. The emotional manipulation was so transparent, it almost made me laugh. But beneath my cold awareness, I felt a tiny pang. Because he was right about one thing. I had always forgiven him. Every childhood transgression, every teenage rebellion, every adult misstep. I'd been his soft place to land, his unfailing supporter, and he was using that history as a weapon against me now. I deleted the voicemail. On Wednesday, a package arrived. Inside was a framed photograph of David as a child, sitting on Robert's lap. A note was attached. Remember the good times. Remember who we really are. Please call us. I put the frame in a drawer without looking at it again. Margaret noticed my isolation. She started coming by every afternoon, sometimes with other neighbors. Betty from across the street, Harold from 2 houses down. They drank tea in my kitchen, told me stories about their own difficult family situations, and made sure I wasn't alone. My daughter didn't speak to me for 3 years after I refused to lend her money for her boyfriend's business venture, Betty said. 3 years. But I knew I was right, and eventually she apologized. Sometimes family tests you, Ruth. Sometimes you have to be stronger than love. On Friday, I attended a support group Catherine had recommended, a gathering for seniors dealing with financial exploitation by family members. I sat in a circle in a church basement with 12 other people and listened to their stories. A woman whose nephew had stolen her identity and opened credit cards in her name. A man whose daughter had convinced him to sign over his house, then tried to evict him. A woman whose son had isolated her from friends and convinced her she was losing her memory. When it was my turn to speak, I told my story. And for the first time since this began, I didn't feel alone or crazy or like I was overreacting. You're doing everything right, the group facilitator said. The hardest part isn't the legal battle. It's standing firm when they try to use your love against you. but you're stronger than their manipulation. I went home that night feeling something I hadn't felt in days, steady, grounded. David and Jennifer were circling, watching, waiting for me to crack, sending their carefully worded messages, their emotional appeals, their reminders of better times. But I wasn't going to crack. They'd made a critical miscalculation. They'd thought I was weak, that I was just a lonely old woman who would do anything to keep her family close. They were wrong. I'd been married to a good man for 44 years. I'd raised a child, managed a household, worked hard jobs, survived grief and loss. I'd built a life through determination and strength. That strength hadn't disappeared just because I'd gotten older. If anything, it had crystallized into something harder and clearer. I wasn't giving in. Not to their threats, not to their manipulations, not to their appeals to my love. They wanted a fight? They were going to get one. They came on Sunday afternoon, the time they used to visit, back when I'd believed we were a normal, loving family. I was in the living room when I heard the car in the driveway. I looked out the window and saw both David and Jennifer getting out, along with two other people I didn't immediately recognize. My jaw tightened. I called Catherine immediately. They're here with other people. What do I do? Don't let them in. If they won't leave, call the police. I'm documenting this as harassment. The doorbell rang. I went to the door but didn't open it. Through the glass panel, I could see David holding a bouquet of flowers. Jennifer was smiling. The two strangers stood behind them, a middle-aged couple I now vaguely recognized as David's college friends, Mark and Susan. "Mom?" David called through the door. "Can we please talk? We brought flowers, and Mark and Susan wanted to see you. Can you open the door?" "I have nothing to say to you, David." "Mom, please. We came to apologize. Really apologize. No arguments, no fighting. We just want to make things right." His voice was gentle, reasonable. "We miss you. It's been almost 2 weeks. This is tearing me apart." I hesitated. The emotional pull was still there, even though I knew better. "You can talk from right there," I said through the door. "Say what you need to say." David glanced at Jennifer. Something passed between them. Frustration? Recalculation? "Okay," he said. "Okay. Mom, we made mistakes. We should have been more transparent about everything, but we were genuinely trying to help. The power of attorney. We thought you understood what you were signing. We thought you wanted us to handle things for you. And the money we withdrew, that was all for expenses related to your care. We have receipts for everything. Then you can provide those receipts to my attorney." Jennifer stepped forward. "Ruth, please. This lawyer is going to drain all your money in legal fees. Is that what you want? To spend your savings fighting your own family? We can resolve this right now, today. Just invite us in. Let's sit down like adults and work this out." "I'm not inviting you into my home." Mark spoke up then. "Mrs. Whitmore, I've known David since college. He's a good man. One of the best men I know. I've watched how much he's cared for you over the years, how much effort he's put into making sure you're okay. Whatever misunderstanding has happened here, I know David's heart is in the right place. It was a coordinated effort. They'd brought witnesses, character references, people to vouch for David's integrity. They'd planned this carefully. "I appreciate your perspective, Mark," I said. "But this is between me and my son." David's expression shifted. The gentleness was fading. "Mom, I'm trying really hard here. I'm trying to be patient and understanding, but you're being completely unreasonable. You've always been stubborn, but this is ridiculous." "I'm unreasonable? You tried to steal my money." "We were trying to protect you." Jennifer's voice rose sharply. "From yourself. You're old, Ruth. You're declining. You forget things. You get confused. Someone needs to manage your affairs before you lose everything or get scammed by some stranger." "I'm not confused. And the only people trying to scam me are standing on my porch right now." David's face darkened. "You're making a huge mistake. Do you understand what this is going to do? The court battle, The publicity? Everyone in town is going to know our business. People are going to take sides. Your friends, our friends, everyone. Is that what you want? To air our family's dirty laundry in public? I want you to leave my property. We're trying to give you a chance here, Jennifer hissed. One last chance to fix this quietly. If you don't drop this legal nonsense right now, we're moving forward with the conservatorship petition. We have a doctor who will testify about your mental decline. We have statements from people who've witnessed your confusion. We will prove you're incompetent, and a judge will give us control of everything. Your house, your money, your medical decisions, everything. The threat was naked now, no longer dressed up in concern or love. And then what? I asked. Then you'll have exactly what you wanted, access to my money. Is that the goal? To declare me incompetent so you can spend my savings? It's for your own good, David shouted. You can't see it now, but we're trying to save you. Get off my property, I said. All of you, now, or I'm calling the police. David stared at me, his face contorted with rage. You're going to regret this. When you're alone and nobody wants anything to do with you, when you're sick and there's no one to take care of you, you're going to remember this moment. You're going to remember that you chose a lawyer over your own son. I chose truth over lies, I said. I chose dignity over theft. Now leave. They left, finally, but not before David threw the flowers onto my porch, the bouquet scattering across the steps, petals crushing underfoot. I watched them drive away, then locked the door and leaned against it. My whole body was shaking, not just with fear, though that was there. The threat of conservatorship was real, and the idea of being declared incompetent, of losing control of my own life, terrified me. But beneath the fear was something else, something fierce and burning. They'd shown their masks. Completely. The loving son and daughter-in-law act was gone, replaced by naked aggression and threats. They weren't even pretending anymore. They just wanted my money, and they'd use any means necessary to get it. I called Catherine and told her everything. Good, she said. This is actually good. They're getting desperate, which means they know their case is weak. And the more aggressive they get, the more it supports our claims of financial exploitation and harassment. Keep documenting everything. That night, I barely slept. But when dawn came, I got out of bed with renewed determination. They'd tried to intimidate me. They'd failed. Now it was my turn to strike back. The court hearing was scheduled for a Wednesday morning in late November. Catherine had requested an emergency hearing to address both the attempted financial fraud and David and Jennifer's threatened conservatorship petition. I dressed in the same navy suit I'd worn to the bank. Catherine had coached me extensively. Speak clearly, stick to facts, don't let emotions take over. I'd practiced my testimony, reviewed all the documents, prepared myself mentally, but nothing could have fully prepared me for the moment I walked into that courtroom and saw David and Jennifer sitting with their attorney, a sharp-looking man in an expensive suit named Richard Pemberton. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Judge Patricia Morrison. She reviewed the case file silently for several minutes before looking up. This is a highly unusual situation, she said. We have competing claims of financial exploitation and mental incompetence. Mr. Pemberton, I'll hear from you first. Pemberton stood. Your Honor, my clients are desperately concerned about Mrs. Whitmore's well-being. Over the past year, they've observed significant mental decline, memory lapses, confusion, difficulty managing basic tasks. They've tried to help her, even going so far as to obtain power of attorney to protect her assets. Instead of appreciating their care, Mrs. Whitmore has responded with paranoid accusations and legal threats. We're requesting a competency evaluation and temporary conservatorship while that evaluation is pending. And what evidence do you have of mental decline? Pemberton presented documents, affidavits from David and Jennifer detailing times I'd supposedly been confused. A statement from a neighbor, someone I barely knew, claiming I'd left my garage door open overnight. A doctor's note from 3 years ago mentioning that I'd seemed mildly forgetful during a routine checkup after Robert's death. It was a careful construction of cherry-picked incidents and exaggerated claims. Catherine stood. Your Honor, I'd like to present contradicting evidence. Mrs. Whitmore has brought her complete medical records from the past 3 years. Her primary physician, Dr. Helen Martinez, has submitted a letter stating that Mrs. Whitmore is in excellent mental health with no signs of dementia or cognitive decline. Mrs. Whitmore also took a full cognitive assessment last week. I have the results here. She handed documents to the judge. I'd spent 3 hours with a neuropsychologist, undergoing every test Catherine had recommended. The results were clear. My cognitive function was normal for my age, with no signs of impairment. Judge Morrison reviewed the documents carefully. These are very different pictures of Mrs. Whitmore's mental state. Mrs. Whitmore, would you like to speak? I stood. My voice was steady. Your Honor, I'm not confused or forgetful. I manage my own home, my own finances, and my own life. What my son and his wife characterize as mental decline is actually my discovery of their theft. 6 weeks ago, they brought me papers to sign, claiming they were medical directive updates. I now believe that among those papers was a power of attorney form. They used that forged authorization to attempt to withdraw all the money from my bank account. When the bank prevented this, and when I discovered it, I hired an attorney to protect myself. In response, my son and daughter-in-law have threatened me, harassed me, and are now trying to have me declared incompetent so they can gain access to my assets legally. This isn't about my well-being, it's about my money, Pemberton interrupted. Your Honor, this is exactly the kind of paranoid thinking that concerns my clients. I'm not finished, I said, and something in my tone made him stop. I have bank records showing $8,500 in withdrawals I never made. I have documentation of David and Jennifer's attempts to access my accounts. And I have this. Catherine handed me a folder. I passed it to the judge. This is the power of attorney document my son and daughter-in-law presented to the bank. My attorney hired a forensic document examiner. The signature on this document doesn't match my actual signature. It's a forgery. The courtroom went completely silent. Judge Morrison studied the forensic report, then looked at David and Jennifer. Is this true? Did you forge Mrs. Whitmore's signature? David stood abruptly. No, she signed it herself. She just doesn't remember. She forgets things all the time. The forensic analysis is quite clear, Mr. Whitmore. The judge's voice was cold. The pressure points, the stroke patterns, the letter formations, none of them match your mother's verified signatures. This appears to be a traced forgery. Jennifer grabbed David's arm, whispering urgently. He looked panicked now, the careful composure cracking. This is ridiculous, David said. We're her family. We were trying to help. She's confused and angry, and she's turned on us because she's not thinking clearly. Your Honor, Catherine interrupted. I also have records of threatening statements Mr. Whitmore and Mrs. Jennifer Whitmore made to my client, including explicit threats to have her declared incompetent and to take control of her assets. I have witnessed testimony from neighbors who heard these confrontations. This is not a family trying to help an elderly relative. This is financial exploitation, pure and simple. Judge Morrison set down the documents. When she looked at David and Jennifer, her expression was severe. I'm denying the petition for conservatorship. Mrs. Whitmore is clearly competent to manage her own affairs. Furthermore, I'm ordering a full investigation into the forged power of attorney document and the unauthorized withdrawals. Mr. Pemberton, I strongly suggest your clients cooperate fully with this investigation. David's face went white. Jennifer had started crying, but the tears looked performative, desperate. Your Honor, Pemberton began. We're done here, the judge said. Mrs. Whitmore, I'm granting a restraining order. Your son and daughter-in-law are not to contact you or come within 500 feet of your property. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down with a sharp crack. I stood there for a moment, barely processing what had happened. Catherine put a hand on my shoulder. "You did it," she said quietly. "You won." Across the courtroom, David and Jennifer were arguing with their attorney, their voices rising in panic. They'd thought they could manipulate the system the way they'd manipulated me. They'd thought their lies would be believed. They'd been wrong. The investigation moved quickly once the court got involved. Within 2 weeks, the police had enough evidence to file criminal charges against both David and Jennifer: forgery, attempted fraud, and financial exploitation of an elderly person. Catherine called me with updates every few days. The notary whose stamp had appeared on the forged power of attorney testified that she'd never notarized any document for me and that her stamp had been reported stolen 6 months ago. Security footage from my bank showed David and Jennifer attempting to withdraw the full $78,000 from my account. Records from their credit cards showed mounting debt over $90,000, despite their apparently comfortable lifestyle. The picture that emerged was ugly and clear. They'd been living far beyond their means for years. The country club membership, the luxury vacation, the new car, all purchased on credit they couldn't afford to pay back. They'd seen my savings as a solution to their financial problems, and when I'd proven too healthy and independent to be easily manipulated, they'd decided to forge documents and take what they wanted. The trial was set for early January. David and Jennifer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the district attorney refused. The evidence was too strong, the crime too clear-cut. On the day of the trial, I sat in the courtroom and watched my son take the stand. His lawyer tried to paint him as a concerned son who'd made mistakes out of love. But under cross-examination, the truth came out. The prosecutor presented evidence of the forged document, the unauthorized withdrawals, the threatening statements, the calculated lies. "Mr. Whitmore," the prosecutor asked, "did you tell your mother that you would have her declared incompetent and placed in a state-run nursing home if she didn't drop the charges against you?" David hesitated. I was upset. "I didn't mean..." "Yes or no, Mr. Whitmore?" "Yes, but..." "And did you withdraw $8,500 from your mother's account without her knowledge or permission?" Another pause. "I thought she wouldn't mind. I planned to pay it back. That's not what I asked. Did you withdraw the money without her knowledge or permission?" "Yes." The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. The sentencing hearing was 2 weeks later. The judge, a different judge this time, Judge Raymond Chen, reviewed the case with visible distaste. "Mr. Whitmore, Mrs. Jennifer Whitmore, you betrayed the trust of a family member in the most calculated and cruel way imaginable. You didn't just steal money. You tried to steal your mother's autonomy, her dignity, and her independence. You forged documents, you lied to banks and to the court, and when your victim discovered your crimes, you threatened and harassed her." He sentenced David to 3 years in prison and Jennifer to 2 years. Both were ordered to pay full restitution. Not just the $8,000 they'd already taken, but additional damages for emotional distress and legal fees. The total came to $37,000. "And I want to be clear," Judge Chen added. "If either of you attempts to contact Mrs. Whitmore after you've served your sentences, you will be back in this courtroom facing additional charges. The restraining order is permanent." I sat in the gallery, watching my son's face as the sentence was read. He looked at me once, his expression a mixture of anger and disbelief, as if he still couldn't understand how I'd done this to him. But I understood something he didn't. I hadn't done this to him. He'd done it to himself. After the sentencing, Catherine and I walked out of the courthouse together into the cold January air. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Tired," I admitted, "but free." The legal battle had taken 4 months from start to finish. 4 months of stress, fear, sleepless nights, and constant anxiety. But it was over now. David and Jennifer were going to prison. My assets were protected. My independence was secure. A week later, I changed my will completely. I left specific bequests to the charities Robert and I had always supported: the local animal shelter, the library, the food bank. I left money to Margaret and my other neighbors who'd supported me. And I set up a trust to fund legal assistance for other elderly people facing financial exploitation by family members. David's name appeared nowhere in the document. My lawyer asked me if I was sure. "He's still your son," she said gently. "In case you ever reconcile." "I won't reconcile," I said. "He made his choices. These are the consequences." I slept well that night, better than I had in months. The house felt different now, lighter somehow, as if a dark presence had been lifted. I could sit in my kitchen and drink my coffee without fear. I could answer my phone without dread. I could check my bank account without wondering what had been stolen. I'd won, not just in court, but in the bigger battle. I'd stood up for myself. I'd refused to be a victim. I'd fought back against people who'd assumed I was too old, too weak, too loving to protect myself. They'd learned otherwise. And if there was sadness in that victory, the sadness of losing a son, of recognizing that the child I'd raised had become someone capable of such cruelty, I accepted it. Some losses were necessary. Some relationships weren't worth saving. Spring came early that year. By March, the tulips I'd planted with Robert 20 years ago were blooming in brilliant reds and yellows along the front walk. I spent my mornings in the garden, afternoons reading on the porch, and evenings cooking meals I actually enjoyed instead of forcing down food while my stomach churned with anxiety. The support group Catherine had introduced me to had become a regular part of my life. Every Friday, I met with the others at the church basement. We shared stories, offered advice, celebrated victories, and mourned losses. I'd made real friends there, people who understood what it meant to survive betrayal by family. One of them, a man named Walter, whose daughter had stolen his retirement savings, became a close companion. We started meeting for coffee outside the group, then for dinner, then for long walks in the park. Nothing romantic. We were both too old and too scarred for that. But a genuine friendship built on shared experience and mutual respect. "You should be proud," he told me one afternoon as we sat by the duck pond. "Most people in your situation wouldn't have fought back. They would have let their kids take everything rather than face the conflict." "I almost did," I admitted. "If Margaret hadn't told me about the bank incident, I might never have known until it was too late." Margaret had become an even closer friend. She checked on me daily, not out of pity, but because we genuinely bonded. We took a cooking class together, joined a book club, and planned a trip to visit her daughter in Colorado that summer. I volunteered at the library twice a week, helping with the literacy program. I took an online course in digital photography. I rediscovered hobbies I'd abandoned during the years of caring for Robert during his illness, and then mourning his death. My life wasn't just stable, it was good. Better in some ways than it had been in years. Meanwhile, word reached me about David and Jennifer through the small-town grapevine I'd tried to avoid, but couldn't entirely escape. They were in prison, of course. David at a minimum security facility 3 hours away, Jennifer at a women's correctional institution 2 counties over. But their troubles extended far beyond incarceration. Their house had been foreclosed on. Unable to make mortgage payments without my money, and with mounting legal fees, they'd lost everything. The bank had seized the property and sold it at auction. Jennifer's dental office had fired her the day after the guilty verdict. No one wanted a convicted felon working in healthcare, especially one whose crime involved fraud and exploitation. David's company had terminated him as well. Ethics violation, his former supervisor told someone who told someone who told Margaret. His career in sales was effectively over. Who would hire someone convicted of financial fraud? Their friends had abandoned them. Mark and Susan, the couple they'd brought to my house that day, wanted nothing to do with them once the truth came out. The country club they'd been so proud to join had revoked their membership before the trial even started. Even worse for them, the criminal conviction made them virtually unemployable. With felony fraud on their records, they'd struggle to find any decent work when they were released. The professional careers they'd worked years to build were destroyed. I heard through Margaret that Jennifer's parents, who lived in Florida and whom I'd met only a handful of times, had disowned her. They'd sent a letter to the prison saying they wanted no further contact. And the debt remained. $37,000 in restitution, plus their credit card debt, plus all the legal fees their lawyer had charged them. Even after prison, they'd be drowning financially for years. Betty, my neighbor, mentioned seeing a news article about the case being used as a teaching example in elder law courses at the local university. David and Jennifer had become cautionary tales. I felt no satisfaction in their suffering, but I felt no guilt either. They'd created this situation. Every consequence they faced was the direct result of their own choices. One warm afternoon in May, I was planting tomatoes in my backyard garden when I heard a car pull up in front of the house. I tensed instinctively, old fears rising. But when I walked around to the front, I saw it was just a delivery truck. The driver handed me a registered letter. It was from Jennifer's attorney, not the criminal lawyer, but someone handling their civil affairs. Inside was a statement of their first restitution payment, $150. At the rate of $150 per month, it would take them over 20 years to pay back what they owed me. I filed the statement away and went back to my garden. That evening, Walter came over for dinner. I made Robert's favorite recipe, beef stew with homemade biscuits. We ate on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. "You know what I realized?" I said. "I'm 72 years old. For most of my life, I thought my value came from taking care of other people, being a good wife, a good mother, putting everyone else first. And now I know my value comes from taking care of myself, from standing up for myself, from refusing to let anyone, even family, treat me as less than I am." I paused. I spent so many years afraid of being alone, but I'm not alone. I have friends, community, a life I've built on my own terms, and that's worth more than any relationship built on lies. Walter raised his glass of iced tea. "To standing up for yourself." I clinked my glass against his. "To surviving." The evening was peaceful. The garden smelled like fresh earth and growing things. Inside my house, my secure, paid-off house that no one could take from me, everything was exactly where it should be. I'd lost a son, but I'd found myself, and that was a trade I could live with.